So, welcome to our episode. I have the pleasure sitting down here with Jim Dorey, who is the president and COO of Inserra Supermarkets. And Inserra Supermarkets is part of the ShopRite stores. He is not only an amazing leader, he's also an author. And I've known Jim for probably over a decade and remember the first time I met him. And Jim is someone who is kind, transparent, an amazingly authentic leader. And I'm lucky to sit down with him. So, welcome to the show, Jim.
Well, thank you, Roddy. That's some introduction. Maybe we should wrap it up here so I don't spoil any of that. But yeah, pleasure to be on. Thank you for the invitation. And thanks to everybody who spent their time listening to us.
Of course. So tell me a little bit about your background, your family, where you're from, and a little bit about your career, because you have made some incredible just your pathway, right? Really, really fast in your career. So family.
Yeah, no, thank you. I mean, just a quick synopsis. I grew up in northern New Jersey and I never really moved too far. I'm still in that area. Went to the public school systems, went to Montclair State. As a kid growing up, my family had a corner deli and really grocery supermarket. So I was working from a young age at all kinds of jobs and got to really meet a lot of great people and learn from being around older people as a kid. I think was really helpful. After coming out of Montclair State, had a couple small businesses. And then over time, through my habit of working out at the gym early in the mornings, I met a crew of people that were, a few years ahead of me. They ended up being executives at Wakefern. And after 5 or 6 years, Dean Janeway Sr. invited me to come and explore working with Wakefern. So that's going back almost 25 years ago. And it's been a fantastic journey. I was able to work in different divisions at Wakefern, supporting the 50 member families at that time. First it was in real estate, helping to find locations and negotiate leases for new stores. Then I got to go through some of the divisions on the procurement side, which really made Wakefern take back then, which was so much fun. And then I went into a subsidiary called PriceRite, which was owned by Wakefern and it still is. And from there, I was a director of perishables and went through a bunch of positions until the board gave me the confidence and made me the president of PriceRite, which was a phenomenal experience. We had stores, mostly on the East Coast, and just a really dedicated group of associates that helped that chain grow to over $1 billion. And then, through that, I got to deal with so many of the Wakefern families, including the Inserra family. So a few years back, working with Larry and Sarah, came to join this group and this family, and I've been here for almost 4 years.
Oh, wow.
And like you said, we have 23 ShopRites, a couple of PriceRites, a fresh grocer, some liquor stores, and it's just phenomenal. It's all really based in northern New Jersey and Rockland County, so really enjoying the ride.
That's amazing. So I just want to go back to what you said before, which I think is really cool. Back to yes, there's a lot of growth, but the networking that happened early, you said in your gym days, just hanging out at the gym, which you still do. Yeah. That's how you got to know these executives.
Yeah, it's funny. So, I was just married, I have 2 children that are, now grown, but at the time, just married. And I think my daughter was an infant. Yeah. And, the gym would open up at 6. So there was a crew of people that were there, before 6, waiting to open. And over time, we really got to know each other. It became a social group. And all of them were probably about 20 years older than me for the most part.
Wow.
And we had dinners and just lots of fun. And you really got to know people at 6 a.m. that they had a routine. And like I said, Dean Janeway came and said, "Hey, I want you to come interview at Wakefern." And, I didn't really even know what Wakefern was. I knew ShopRite, but not Wakefern. And, through that process, it was great because I got to meet a lot of people. It was a foot in the door. And he said, "Listen, we have a lot of executives. The bench is thinning out and there's a lot of people that are going to need to step up. No guarantees, but this is your opportunity." The network is so important, as the people that you meet and the people that you can connect. It's funny, just this morning, I got a text from one of our vendors, a super great guy. He came here from Israel, started a business, lost the business through some, partners that were the wrong partners. He's rebuilding and he's got a great business with us. And he grabbed me one day and he said, just recently, he said, "Listen, I need someone like you who can help me to get into more accounts." He said, his feeling was his language barrier was an issue. And I told him, I said, "You communicate great." I said, I think you can walk into any office or any company and represent yourself really well. But he said, I just want some advice. So I said, how about I connect you with a couple of people who I think have the experience that might benefit you, and you tell them what you're looking for, and they'll give you advice back. Maybe what you think you need isn't even what they
I
believe you
love
need.
that.
So he just texted me today. One of the a good friend that I put him in touch with. Yeah, they had one conversation. Then he had him come up to visit in Connecticut, and this the fellow that asked about the help texted me this morning. So I just want to thank you so much for. It was exactly what I needed. He was super helpful and so generous with his time. And it's just like it's always a blessing to be able to put good people together. And sometimes nothing comes of it, but usually a lot of good things happen. So it's just that network, the like human capital that we have, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So it's a great spot to be able to be in to put people together. I never take that for granted.
That's amazing. And big paying it forward, and almost like you had that experience in your past, right? So you value that so much to pay it forward and mentor the next generation, the next person. And I love that. So I definitely have always thought you've been like a super connector, and I know many in my circle, and those are people that you really want to be around, right? Because they know everyone and they just know who to connect who with, which is really amazing. I love that. And look what you did for his business, which is wonderful.
No, thank you. Listen, those are the things. I heard one recently that said you can't teach a new dog old tricks. And they were saying like the experience of life sometimes are the things you just can't replace. So you're great at a lot of things when you're first coming out and young, but there's certain things you just got to go through. And part of that is meeting all these different people and having them, helping them, and they're helping you. And, I just say it kind of grows and grows. And yeah, I always tell, younger people coming up that, make as many fans of you as you can, because opportunities are going to happen.
Yeah.
You're not going to know about the opportunity. There'll be a room full of people deciding who gets the opportunity, and you don't get to choose who's in the room. So the more odds that people say Radia is great and I would recommend her, the more chances are going to come your way. So it's the right thing to do, and it just over time it really stacks up for you.
Yeah. Thank you for giving that example, because I think a lot of times what I've seen with whether it's people early in their career, even mid-level, it's like, I'm so busy doing other things that I don't have time to connect with this person. And it's like, you don't have time to not connect with that person, because it's just the laws of reciprocity, whatever it is, right? Adding value, giving that, like you said, when you're in that room, people are mentioning your name, which is really amazing. So
yeah,
I love that. And so just to piggyback on that, Jim, how have, or I should even ask, like, when do you think personal branding is such a big thing now, right? People are talking about personal brand. And I do think there's so much weight to it. It doesn't matter where you're at. You need to create that brand of whether you're a connector, you're a mentor, you're a coach. What have you done to help do that? And what advice would you give to other leaders on why they should really develop that personal brand, or what it means to you even?
Yeah, it's funny because personal brand is a term, from past how many years, right?
Yeah.
But you think about the earliest advice anybody ever got or gave to you, when you're very young, is your reputation and how you carry yourself is all you have, especially when you're, just getting started. And it really is, how you follow up on things. Do you do what you say you're going to do? Do you treat people right? That was your personal brand before a brand existed. Because when everything's said and gone and you're not in the title anymore, or God forbid you lose all the money you have or whatever, it's just you as that person. And how was Roddy? How did she treat me? How did she, make me feel? Was she good to me? Did she always do what she said? Was Jim, honest about things? And that is the personal brand. Then on the social side of things, as that became more of an opportunity, I'm active on LinkedIn. We have thousands of associates at Inserra Supermarkets, and they're doing phenomenal things every day. I said you don't have to look far, and whatever organization you're in, there's people going above and beyond every day. And when you could call them out and bring attention to it and recognize publicly, it's the right thing to do. It's great for them. It makes everybody want to do more. And it also attracts opportunities to you, whether it's people that want to work for you or with you. And we see that all the time. There's so many vendors that we helped when their business wasn't really relevant in sense of couldn't help us so much in terms of driving sales or making more money. They were just getting started, but we gave them a chance, and we still do. And then guess what? As things go and they grow or they end up in a bigger place, when they have opportunities, last year, 2 years ago, one of the chains closed a bunch of stores. And one of our, really good vendors called me and said, "Hey, I have a lot of money that I was going to spend on that chain this year. Now, my boss is telling me, where do you want to put that money? And you were the first chain that came to mind. I want to spend it on you."
Wow.
And, listen, it's awesome. It helped our business. It wasn't why we always did what we did, but it was a benefit of, taking care of people. And, when the opportunities come, we had another one. They had a trade show exhibit that they said, "Hey, it would be cool to use this in a retail environment somewhere." And they're having a national meeting talking about where could they do. And, this person mentioned Inserra Supermarkets first, which again, that's the room that you didn't know about the opportunity and you didn't know the people that were there. But they put us out there. So it's a lot of fun. And, not all of them make it. And I tell everybody, hey, you got a new product. We're going to try and give you a chance, and we'll learn and see if there's a possibility. We'll show you what it takes to get into the store. But at the end, the customer is ultimately going to say if you succeed or not, right? Even if we love you, if the item isn't right, it's not quality, it's not a value, whatever, that's up to you.
That's so true. And I've seen you actually do that so well on highlighting your people and highlighting these other brands. And I do remember it was I think bread company, was it? Like
Oh yeah.
the women that had that company. And I remember that, and I remember something happened to them, and that was posted on, and how you guys rallied behind them. And I was just like, wow, like that would never have been out there, right? And what a great way to highlight your people, highlight what other people are doing if they're not physically in the store. So those things I love about social media, where I think there's such a lot of people will complain about it, right? But there's so many great parts of social media where no one could ever know that your employees are doing great things or you guys are doing great things. So that's wonderful. I love hearing.
Yeah, you're right. With social media, you got to be careful. What you select is the content that you'll get back, right? So if you're looking for every piece of trashy news going on in entertainment, or every political struggle that's happening, or all the bad things, that's what you're going to get fed. But if you're putting out a lot of good things, and you're following the good news, and you're following the productive things, or the leadership things, or, whatever your religion happens to be, if it's good stuff that you're getting, the chances are that the feed that you're getting is going to have more and more of that, which is going to, you want to be the person who's standing in a room talking about how bad things are all the time, or the person that's talking about the opportunities, because that is what you'll attract, on the business side as well.
Yeah. And you bring up such a great point. I talked about this a little while ago. It was just something that came to my mind. I didn't realize a large percentage of people that are consuming social media, consuming news, right? And so if you don't take control of your feed, you are consuming all the things you don't want to consume. So any advice you would give to people on how to manage that, their consumption of bad news, good news?
Yeah, listen, I don't want any bad news. It's always going to find you, so you don't need to seek it out, and unfortunately, another, tragic shooting that just happened, and every headline is going to be about that and about the person and all of the notoriety it gives to the person. And it's just, it's bad. You need to know it happens, and prayer for everybody that it affected. But, at the end of the day, if you consume yourself in political battles and who's calling each other names, and the things that you can't really affect. So I look at it and say, what are the things that are going to help you? What are the things you really have an impact on? There's certain things you got to keep tabs on.
Sure.
I don't spend a ton of time reading about all of the industry and all of the, financial reports that are coming out in each one, because, we're focused on winning within our four walls with our team.
Sure.
You have to be aware of what goes on around you. But if you're spending all day, looking to the side, watching what's going on, everybody's passing you. And, I just shared, it was a piece that I found from somebody else just recently, but everybody says, every leader says, you can't find good people. The struggle for talent is so real, and nobody wants to work, and this generation doesn't want to. And it was funny. It was a clip that went back to like 1904. And basically from 1904, every 8 or 10 years, there was another quote in the news, somebody saying the same thing. This generation doesn't want to work. There's no good workers. And, people will come up to me and tell me that's the reason why their business is no good, or that's the reason why conditions aren't the way they're supposed to be. And I just look at it and say, what good comes from that? How about maybe you got to speak to 100 people instead of 60 to find the one that you need?
Yeah.
Go ahead and do it. And again, there are a lot of people out there that are great. It's our job to spot them and then give them the opportunity to grow and bring them along. Because we have a big organization and we have a lot of part-time associates, every day we're hiring people, and I say every day we're hiring some superstar. Then
Mm.
it's on us to say, is the experience going to be great? That someone's going to take them under their wing, explain the job to them, show them the good side of things, show them different opportunities, and help them and make them feel like part of our culture and part of the Inserra family? Or is somebody not going to instruct them right, not really give them any kind of training, put them into the chaos and hope for the best, and the person doesn't show up for day three? So that's on us to make it a good experience. And I always say we don't get it right every day. That's for sure. We're always, we're never perfect, but the goal is to get a little bit better every day, to make a great experience. When we do something that doesn't live up to that experience, face it, be honest about it, see how we fix it. So, I think you got to just keep, you got to keep the positivity around you, good energy, because that's the people that other people want to be around. And that's why they get the opportunities, not the one who tells you everything that's going wrong. And, again, you got to listen to them too. You got to hear them, because some of what they're telling you is accurate in your business, and if you want to always drown them out, you won't get bad feedback.
Right.
You do need it. But in terms of what you're going to spend your day putting out, I think, you need to be a lot more on the positive side.
I love that. So it's fine to find the opportunities to put the blinders on and sometimes take them off.
Yeah, exactly.
Depending on the scenario. But what you talk about too is a lot of accountability, right? What I hear you saying is you guys are trying to set people up for success, the good talent to grow, and then taking also accountability if you're not pairing them up with the right person. And right, so it's not always they're bad people. It's just the opportunity is trying to make it the best so that they grow.
Sometimes we force people to grow before they're ready, and we put them into a position that they're not ready yet for. And then I say, hey, what did we do training wise to set them up to succeed? What could we have done differently? What part of this could be on us, just the process of how we made it happen? And what do we do from here? And if you're giving people honest feedback and you're hearing them, and you got a place where everybody can talk to each other, and there's no fear of, well, if I say this, I'll be seen a certain way. That helps, because then you kind of say, hey, you know what? It looks like we dropped the ball here. We did have a process. We didn't follow it exactly. Let's see if we can, make a turn and fix the situation. So the good news is you always get an opportunity to try again.
Yeah, sure. And you bring up a piece that I think we all know leaders, individual contributors struggle with is having the time, especially in the industry, to listen. So with your schedule being so crazy, how do you find time to listen to your people? Because I've been in rooms where I see people talk so highly of you before I walk in a room, and I'm like, oh wow, like they know you know them, you mention them by name and all that, right? You show you care. So how do you take time to do that?
No, I appreciate it. Listen, I already know what I know. You know what you know. When we're talking and when we're doing all the speaking, nobody wants to contradict the leader, right? So whatever you say at that point, any other ideas are probably shot, because, if I say blue looks great, there's not a lot of people that feel comfortable stepping up saying blue is a bad idea. We should do, gray. Sure. So speak last as the leader is one thing that, we kind of circulated a few years back, and I really take value in that. And then asking the questions, because we have so many people in so many stores, I might only see them every few weeks, certain people. So I want to hear what's important to them. And sometimes it's just they're telling you about how their kid's doing. We got a associate, he works in Dorey in one of our stores. His daughter's playing basketball at Princeton University, which probably the most prestigious university in the world, just in my opinion. But it's just so cool to hear, somebody working so hard so their kid can do this. And then they want to tell you about it. And I want to hear about it, and it's when you get those, when you hear them, whatever it is, like we do a program where we give our associates these slip-proof shoes. We pay for them so they'll stay safer, and it protects the workplace. But two of our associates are very fashion forward. Said, hey, all the shoes are black and gray. What about red ones? Because we always wore red sneakers and everybody loved them. Can we get red ones? So I said, you know what? Let me find out. So, and I want to learn. So they're always, there's every day I get to learn 100 things because of questions like that. So we found out there was a rose gold pair, but there's not a red one. So I say, but at the same time, they know that they're being heard. You're taking it serious, and you're answering their questions, because, people stop me with all kinds of things. And sometimes I don't know the answer, a lot of times. And I'll say to them, hey, I'm going to take this. I'm going to get the right person, and somebody's going to come back to you with an answer.
Yeah.
Because, again, as a leader or a part of a team, if you don't follow up, people just lose credibility. Like, here comes Jim. He likes to talk, but he's not going to do anything about it. And So I just think it's the most important part of the day. I do a lot of talking too, but I try and do, I try and do a lot of listening.
And you do a lot of listening. What so if you were to connect your career path and your growth yourself to a few things that you've done really well, and I've heard you say a few of them already, right? Listening and I'm going to go into continuous learning at some point because I'm sure that's a big one. What are some of the things that you would give advice to others to do? It doesn't matter where they are in their career, to either grow or to help grow their people. If they're that type of person, they just want to grow a big team and make sure they're successful. What are those?
Fortunately, I get a lot of practice with this question because we had my son Anthony's 21st birthday. We had dinner the other night, and my daughter Alexandra says, "What's one piece of advice you would give him for this year?"
I love it.
Which is a great question. So,
Yeah.
and sometimes it's just what's at top of mind. But a couple of things that come to mind for me, that day, I said, Jeff Bezos, obviously the founder of Amazon, who, I think you can learn a lot from his successes. He tells a story from being a young kid, and he, obviously was always intelligent, and he was driving with his grandparents, and his grandmother was smoking at the time. And he had heard that, for every cigarette you smoke, you take 7 minutes off your life. So he was doing the math, and they're driving, and he yells from the back of the seat, "Hey, Grandma, you've taken 3 years off of your life." And he said the grandfather stops the car, and he was real close with his grandfather. Says, like, I didn't know if he was going to tell me, "Hey, that's great, you're so clever." He pulled him to the side, and he said, "You know what? It's much more important to be kind than to be smart." And
Oh.
learn that. And you think about, you want to, especially when you're coming up, you want to show everybody how much you know, and you want to talk and talk over everybody. So listening, treating people right is so easy, and it's so right to do. So that'd be one thing. Taking on opportunities is important.
Mm.
They say even if you don't know that you know how to do it, if somebody puts it out to you, jump in. Because you don't know how to do a lot of things, but you're going to learn to do them, and ask for a lot of help, because when you get into a new situation, it is new and it's not expected that you'll know everything. So take the chance and ask for help and listen. You get to know as many people around you as you can. Help them where you can. Do the right thing for them, because that'll all come around to you. Those are just some of the things. Do what do. Make decisions. We talk about decisions we have to make for our stores and for our team, and I said make them as if you're in a room full of those people. So it's never going to be something that's done for the wrong reason. So if questioned on why, your reasoning is something you feel good about sharing with other people. So if you're making a decision because it's going to put more money in the company's pocket, but it's not right,
Mm.
those are the ones that, they're easy to do, but the slope changes, and, take pride. They say, as you do anything is how you do everything.
Mhm.
So whatever the task you're doing, make sure you're killing it. Make sure you're doing great at it. And ask for more options and responsibilities, because I always tell people, put yourself on the map. If somebody stops me in a store and they're working part time, or they're doing a certain job, and say, can I make more money? And I say, what's your role today? Are you willing to do more? We talk about, you got to be able, if they say, well, I just want to do this job because I like it. So that job pays this. So that's really not going to be the opportunity. So, people want to ask, and you got to give them the honest answers to
Yeah.
it. So, those are just a few of the things, surround yourself with people that support you is important. If you got a bunch, I heard one, a while back, and it said, if the friends in the group that you have are always talking about old times, back in high school and back in college, those are the wrong people, because they're not going forward. They're not going to help you to grow. And if the highlight was 25 years ago, you feel bad for that. So, you think about it, and we all know some people like that. And it's like, where do you want to get to? What do you want to be? And I think there's no limits. It's, we got so much opportunity. Some people can talk about, why it's so hard, and it is hard. But if you show up, you do the right thing, you go at it hard, and you're always out there, with good energy, it just seems like opportunities are almost limitless that come at you.
Yeah. Oh, and those 2 points too, you remind me of someone who told me about not looking in the rear view mirror, the rear view being so small, right? And like looking at the windshield. And I
Yeah,
feel like I'm a look out the
exactly.
windshield person. I don't
Yeah.
like to look in the rear view. I mean, to reflect, yes, but not in the past. And I've seen that with so many professionals, right? The limiting beliefs that they put on themselves. And that's something I work with people on, is removing that, right? It's hard. Like, I can't do it. I can't do it. Like, if you tell yourself that, yeah, you can't do it. But I
Yeah.
with you 100%, Jim. Like,
I
sky is
know you
the
bring
limit.
the positive energy. I know you're on board with that plan.
I love that so much, so much.
Thanks.
So for you, that those values, it sounds like someone was telling me this recently, and I so agree with it, right? Just making those decisions, knowing what your values are. I think that's a really important thing, right? Because then you start to make and execute on decisions that align with your values and the company's values, right? Then it makes it easier. For you, as you've learned different values, I know Montclair is something that that's Montclair is your stomping grounds, you guys give back so much to them, which I think is amazing.
Right.
So for you, is there anything that from your education there and your education with like CCL and Harvard too, that has helped shape who you are as a leader, or is it just a combination of a lot of different things?
Yeah, listen, I think every day's a learning experience. I think growing up, like I said, in the deli environment, being 12 and 13 and doing, pizza dishes, but being around older people from all walks of life. We used to joke there was a bunch of older guys that would hang in the back and have coffee every morning. And I would say, you guys solving the world problems. And, one was a lawyer, one was a mechanic, one was a, car executive. And you just kind of hear and see what people are like and learn, everybody's good for something, even if it's a bad example, right? So you see how you don't want to be, in work and in personal life. And then going through, public schools. I grew up in West Orange, which was northern New Jersey, and then not far from Montclair. And the thing I loved about Montclair was everybody was a hard worker. I mean, a lot of the professors came out of, the business or still were. And just about every student I met, a lot of them, it was the first person in their family to go to college. A lot of them, English was a second language.
Yeah.
And they were all holding down jobs and working, and they were just good people. And then it's funny because there, I tell this story a lot, but at Montclair, I had I guess it was a public speaking class, and the professor grabbed me afterwards and she said, "I want to help you with your language." And I said, "Oh, okay, really?" She said, "You have the classic North Jersey tough guy accent, and I'm going to fix it for you."
Oh my God.
And I was like, I give her, a very smart ass answer, which probably wasn't right, but I declined on the help. But, for a lot of years after that, I would say, does it make me sound less smart or be taken less serious the way my voice sounds? So when I went to leadership at the peak, at CCL,
Yeah.
I was fortunate. Wakefern sent me there. Was, the level of executives was phenomenal. I was on the lower end of, experience and job titles. And the first day there, they were recording like, as if you were getting TV interviewed. So somehow I went first, and then the group gives you feedback. And, these senior executives were all very, very complimentary. And I said at that point, I told them that story, and they said, "Hey, you are you. That's authentic. And if you're speaking authentically, you sound phenomenal, and people will relate to you and remember you more." And that was almost 40 at that point. So that was probably the first time I just was like, I'm never thinking about that again.
Ah.
Which was great. And then lastly, at Harvard, which again, Wakefern sent me there, which was phenomenal. It's called the Advanced Management Program.
Yeah.
So you go with 150 executives from around the world, and they were, military leaders and, running huge companies everywhere. And there I was like, I call myself a travel illiterate because I don't travel a lot. I work a lot, I don't go far from where I am. And I felt like, I think I'm missing out a lot. And I think all of this worldly experience, will be helpful. And it was super helpful. But a couple of things that I learned very quickly to me was, number one, I'm in the group. I can run with this group, executives. So that was like, affirmation that, hey, you know what, there's no imposter syndrome,
Yeah.
you deserve to be here, which was helpful. But then it was, everybody had the same way of doing things. We all had families that we all had to take care of. We all had the different opportunities and problems, no matter where we came from or what our language was. And then I learned that the ones who traveled a ton, when they had time to reflect on it, I think they were some of them were traveling to find happiness and to find fulfillment.
Yeah.
And I was like, I'm happy where I am, happy with my, my wife and my kids and my family around me and my friends. So I don't need to go to, I'm sure I'm missing out on a lot of things by not going to a lot of places, but the time that I do get when I'm not working, I'd rather be there doing that. And that's where I kind of said some of them were like traveling the world, but it seemed like they were always looking for something that was going to make them complete, So those are all the things that they all just pieces of what helped me, I think.
That's great. I've heard that. Going back to what you said about the language thing, I love that there was that affirmation about just being yourself. Someone had shared with me, I don't know if you know Myron Golden, but someone had shared with me a clip of his, and I've been sharing it with everybody because it's like, just speak like you would to a third grader. So people understand, no one feels stupid in the room. It connects with people. It's your authentic self. Go with it. I love that so much. And so many people I see over the years trying to match someone else and try to be someone else, and they just are never themselves. It's really sad because they have their own uniqueness that they don't bring to.
Well, I think to your point, Rod, it's like when you're really good at what you're doing and when you really get it, you speak in the most simplest terms. You don't need complicated jargon.
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of initials. So it's always comes back to the basics.
Yeah.
And I think the one sculptor, I don't know if Michelangelo or whatever, said, I don't create it. I just release all the stuff that is in it, right, to make that, and it's that same thing. You're getting down to what the basics are, who the person is, who the leader is, what the job is to get done.
Yeah.
You don't need a lot of long, if you can't say it real quick and get to the point, you probably don't understand it well enough.
Yeah, that's exactly it, right? And you don't have to be the smartest person. You don't have to pretend you're the smartest person in the room or be the smartest person. Just speak to everyone. It's so much better. So another question I had was about your book, and then want to go to a little bit of retail and AI and what you've been seeing and industry trends and all that fun stuff. So your book, Just Keep Swimming, Leadership, Empowerment, and Comfort Zone. And what caused you to write the book, and what would you recommend to us why we should pick it up?
Listen, for me, it was kind of just a practice. I had been journaling, I listen to a ton of podcasts, as you know, and I'm always learning every day. And, one of them at one point, when I get on something, I'm on it for life. And somebody say, hey, journal, every day, just a little bit, whatever it is. It could be business, it could be life, it could be anything. So I started doing that, and it was getting close to, I think, the pandemic. And, I pull out of my office and I got, 7 binders, of journals that are full. And unfortunately, my handwriting is horrendous. So some of it was hard to read back. But as I'm reading it, I'm saying, my kids, if I could give them any advice that will help them, I'm, at the time 50, I'm 56 now. So at the time, maybe I was 51 or something. And I'm saying some of these things I just learned today with all my experience and all that I've seen. This is something that was valuable to me that I just learned today. So if I could give it to them and they learn it at 20 instead of 50, how much further or better could they be? So I said, I'm going to put it all together. And if nothing else, and then I was like, listen, if a couple of people read this and get something out of it, great. It was a nice process to do. It was helpful, but it wasn't like an ego thing to say, hey, I'm an author. It was really to put all of that together. And I'll tell you, just from people that I know, people are always going to say nice things, but some executives, some, very successful people that came back to me and said, hey, I read this and here's what I got out of it. And it was so helpful and so on. And some of it I laughed because I'm like, I think they're talking about a different book because I don't even know how that tied to it, but everybody gets something different from your message. So in that sense, to me, it was super successful. And it was just a good process. And listen, if I wrote one today, it would be different than that one because you just keep learning and changing and, hopefully getting better. So, it's like a moment in time snapshot, but that was the whole idea behind it.
That's wonderful. And well, your son being like his entrepreneur self and all that probably took some of those lessons. So that's
yeah, I think so. I joke with him. I mean, both of my kids, thank God they do great. But, he at 19, he was telling me something. And I said, you're so much more mature than I was at that age. And I said, no, let me correct myself. You're so much more mature than I am, So, I think that's, another thing that we can learn so much. Like, you get to a certain spot and you're like here, in your professional role, but, kids that are, little kids can teach you things if you're just listening to them. So that's the whole part about listening too. They just, I know you spend time with your family and nieces and nephews and some of the observations that they make, just like, wow, you missed that. So it helps.
That's so true. I was with the brunch that I had with my nephew, and he's like, I'm like, wait a second, this is a leadership moment. Let me ask more questions. And it's like, what? It's like 11 years old, and I'm getting this leadership lesson. It's amazing, but you have to pay
Yeah.
attention, like you said, right?
Yeah, no doubt.
I love that. So in what you are focused on at Inserra and just what you're doing, right? There's so many, I feel like so many changes in retail and everything that's going on in AI, and people are pushing back on certain things. But what do you see as the future in retail? What are some things that you're working on now that you can share that might be
Yeah.
interesting to the audience?
Yeah, I think like at the basics of it, you're going to need a great team around you. So always looking at, we kind of focus on three things, which is people development, communication, and flawless execution.
Love
And I'm like, everything else kind of falls under that in some one way or another. So are we sharing what's important with the team and hearing from them what's important to them so that we're all going in the same direction? Sharing results with them. Somebody said, hey, we're working so hard every day. Are we doing good or we're not doing good? One of the stores, when they meet and they talk about the results, they said, are we eating hot dogs or filet mignon this week? And it's true. They want to know. So
yeah.
We're always focusing on that. We talk about getting a little bit better every day. So it's that compounding of how do you make small improvements, and over days and weeks and years, those turn into huge improvements.
Sure.
We're also, to be part of Wakefern, we're fortunate, we've got some super smart people there. So on the technology side, anytime they bring something forward that they think's worthwhile, I always say, let us know. We'll test whatever you want. Because it's great to test and learn and test and fail and test and succeed. So when they bring something forward, we brought in Simbi Robotics, which is a robot that goes and we tried it in a few stores. We saw hard results. It showed we were better on shelf, so we rolled it out everywhere.
Love that.
One of the Wakefern team, Chris McCrae, introduced us to a company called Vocovo, and it was headsets for the store teams to wear, which isn't like cutting edge technology, but wasn't being done. So we gave it to 2 stores and said, try it for 3 months. Tell us all that's good, all that's bad. And you're going to tell us if we do this in other stores or not.
Wow.
And they gave phenomenal feedback that the vendor took and made changes to. And then we rolled it out everywhere. And the stores were like, it made them more productive. It gives better customer service. It's less time running back and forth. There's less pages over. So it just improved the whole experience. So we're always trying what's out there. And, some people don't like to try and test because there's going to be failures and they feel like, well, I knew that wouldn't work. And you're going to be right sometimes, but if you don't try, you're going to get passed by. So we're always looking for efficiencies, things that'll make the experience better and to make our stores better than anybody else's. Right. And that always is the focus. And then with the adventure and the fun of different items and different vendors and different ethnic opportunities, and we constantly learn. No matter what vendor we meet, I'll say, come in, set them up with our team. And I said, listen, we're either going to learn that we know everything and we're doing everything great, or we're going to see a couple opportunities. We also get to learn about competition. But, they even the most senior people start to have fun with, wow, I didn't know that this item was so meaningful here. And oh, look at this group eats this. And, so we want to always represent the neighborhoods and the communities that we're in. The Inserra family is phenomenal with giving, to every cause in our communities, but also delivering the items that they want. So they know they're respected and feel welcomed in all of our stores. So that's always a focus for us. And then just keeping the stores, it's very costly to do anything in a supermarket. Mm-hmm. You want to touch a couple cases or touch the floor or do this, it's $1 million. And if you want to touch everything, it's millions and millions of dollars. So, you can't do everything all the time. So you can't make every store like your latest and greatest.
Sure.
So the customer that's in your oldest and worst store only knows you for that. So they say, well, you really don't know how to run a store. Look how old and beat up this is. So we're always trying to fix the things that are the most meaningful to the customer, the best for the environment, so all of the things that we can, and then just kind of keep making them better every day. We can't wave the wand and fix them all at once and bring them all up to speed. And even if you did, in 3 years, some of your concepts are outdated. So, so that's a focus for us, is just, building the right people, building the right stores, continuing to stay embedded in the community, build more and deeper relationships with our vendors, and just develop the next leaders. We're always looking at, here's what we have, who's next up, and that helps, to show the opportunity.
Sure.
for our team.
Especially when there's change. And how do you see, I don't want to say just AI, but how do you see AI and technology creating a better environment for your customers, in addition to also your leaders and your employees, your
I
associates?
know it's funny because AI is the buzzword, right? I
Yeah.
think they said the first AI was used in like 1958, and an Excel spreadsheet is actually AI. So we've been using that forever.
My God.
And in our world, we've been using something called Blue Yonder for ordering for probably over 10 years, which is AI for ordering rather than. So it's like anything else. You got to look at everything that's around you, what others are using, and who's doing it great, and just be open to trying it.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to keep helping us in that sense. It's funny because I was invited by one of our vendors to something at Goldman Sachs, which was a day on AI, and it was phenomenal because you're hearing people very close to it that are spending hundreds of hours learning about it, about what opportunities are there. So what I say to my team is, hey, just play with ChatGPT. Ask it
Mhm.
some questions. Ask it about how would I write a schedule for this store. What will you do about the shrink problem for your store, and see that the things that it comes back to you with.
Yeah.
And it was pretty amazing because we talked about a certain department, and shrink is waste, right? So if we
Yeah.
if we bring in $100 worth of product and $2, we sell 98, the other $2 is shrink, right? So it either was damaged, stolen, went bad, whatever. So I said, so one of the fellows been working in this business for 30 something years, posed a question to ChatGPT, and he sent me the playbook that it came back to him with, and he said it was remarkable because it's pretty much what I would have said verbatim, and I've been doing this for 30 years, and it's so I just encourage everybody to learn about it and see what it's capable of. It's not going to do a lot of people's jobs, but it's going to
Yeah.
enhance and give them a chance to make it better. I mean, listen, we probably should already be at the spot where you walk in our store anywhere and can say, hey, where is peanut butter? And
Yeah.
then the speaker will tell you where it is. So it was a lot of that that'll go on. I mean, truck to shelf, making your inventory more lean, which helps your cash flow, will be good. You know, artificial intelligence about the utilities that you're using within your store. The balance of your refrigeration versus your heating and your air conditioning and your lighting, so that you're optimizing, to be very efficient, which is good for the environment and for your bottom line. So those are some of the things. I mean, training, or I should say teaching. Somebody said you train animals, but you teach people, right? So the
True.
teaching our team, how can you make a better orientation, all of that. We have the Inserra family, we make a big investment of a team of dietitians in a lot of our stores.
Yep.
And how can they use it to help people with their dietary needs?
I
So
love that.
yeah, it's I think you just got to be open and always trying and learning from what's going on.
I love it. And Jim, you're the thread throughout everything that I'm hearing you say is openness, being open. Like ChatGPT, it's not saying you have to do it. It's like, try this out and
Yeah.
see what could happen, right? Try this vendor, see what happens. Try this headset, see what happens. And I love that. I think if people were more open, they would see better results. And it's not saying you're going to take it on, but that openness is huge, I think, for leaders to be. There's never like a destination in leadership and success, whatever, right? It's the journey.
Yeah. Yeah. We're just climbing and climbing. And yet when you can get everybody to not be afraid to fail,
Mhm.
the failure is part of our process. You're not going to make anything better if you're not failing. I just always say, hey, test it. But when you do a test, define it, right? How long is it going to go for? What does success look like? Do we all agree on that and follow up? Because I mean, you've probably been involved in places when a test is going on year 6 and somebody says, what's going on with that test? Oh, yeah, I'm not really sure. Yeah, that's not good. So you gotta know what you have testing out there. And yeah, I think it's fun to be open to learning. Is we don't know. So tomorrow, we're going to do something different tomorrow than we've been doing for the past 50 years. And if you don't, you're probably going to have a tough future.
And it just keeps getting faster, right? The things that have happened in the last 10 to 20 years, it's just going to get faster. It's going to happen every year, every 2 years.
No
Massive.
doubt.
Whew.
No doubt. Expectations of our customers, change that quick also.
That's true, right? 1,000%. So just the one thing I wanted to land on, because I think it's important for everyone and leaders and just hearing different people's perspectives. What are a couple of maybe daily practices that you do? You spoke about journaling, which I think is really important. but also just how people can avoid burnout and the stress that comes with having to do more with less resources. I think that's been ongoing for years, but just how to balance it all, how to integrate your life, right? It's important. Family,
Yeah.
all that stuff.
Well, that it's funny. Like people say work-life balance. I don't know what that is. And I always say the example, if you love doing what you're doing, you may do that 23 hours a day and that's your work-life balance, right? You love it. I would say the person who, is a toy maker that loves making toys, they may be holed up in their garage making toys all day long. It doesn't bother them.
True.
Somebody else loves being on the beach and, they want to work a few hours. None of it's wrong or right. It's just what's good for you. I mean, for me, I might always say like the stress or whatever it is, where's it coming from? Who's putting it on you? 99% of the time we're putting it on ourselves. We're having all these scenarios play through that probably aren't right. So yeah, I say be in the moment when problems come up, deal with them, know what the outcomes are, right? I mean, it's kind of like you assume if you have enough responsibility, there will be multiple problems every day. So if every one of them sets you off running, like, I can't believe this. Somebody the other day said, it was Sunday, and they said, am I the only one getting work emails on Sunday? Like, is anybody? And they're like all worked up about it. I'm like, no, you're not. We all get them, but nobody's, really complaining about it, the way you are. So just deal with it. And, if you don't want to, put it on airplane mode, answer it on Monday. But I think you just got to take it in stride. You should always, be able to step away from the screen, put your phone down for an hour if that's what you need. You got to just listen to yourself. I think, rest is very important. It's funny, the exercise piece, I don't do as much as I once did because I never slept. And I literally would sleep, a few hours a night and wake up multiple times. And a few years ago, I made some changes that I sleep much better, but then that leaves me less time to exercise. And I'm like, you know what? I feel better. And I think that's what I needed more than anything. So, I fit in exercise where I can.
Yeah.
It's being present with your family and the ones around you when, we're all guilty of, you're looking at your screen and everyone's talking to you. And, that's going to add to your stress because you're going to have your family upset and you're doing a half-assed job on your work because you're not really dialed into it. So, prioritize all the time, adjust that. I got to sit on a panel up at Cornell recently and Gordon Reed was next to me. He was one of the presidents with Stop and Shop, super smart guy. And he had said years ago, he would put his schedule at the beginning in the weekend, he'd put his schedule for the week. And he said the things that were important, like, his son's soccer game was on his schedule. And as the week went on and everybody was pulling him in different directions and, the temptation was to miss the game, to go handle something. He said, hey, that was the most important thing at that time when I put it in. Why did that change? And for him, that was his way of managing it, which I took that and I thought it was great. So I think, be engaged and learn every day. I'm in the car a lot, just because of my work, but I have pretty much a podcast on. I'm listening to hundreds of hours a month, and every one of them, for the most part, is teaching me things as I'm going. So I feel like I'm being super productive, even though I'm sitting in traffic.
Yeah.
And I said, like, your day comes at you. I was thinking of it one day, like, you're in a stream with water and everything's flying by you, like the current and everything. So if you let it all hit you, it'll overwhelm you and, drown you. But if you can focus on what's important to you, you could still see through the water to find the gold where it is. And you gotta, that stream is not going to stop. The current's going to pick up even more. And if you let it beat you, you're not going to be successful. So, and if you find yourself constantly stressed, constantly burned out, you got to ask why it is, who's putting it on you, and are you in the right setting? There's certain jobs where I think, that's the expectation. And, some people are right for that, some aren't. And if you're not, then you got to look at what your other options are.
Yeah, for sure, for sure. And it really appreciate that you said you balanced your sleep, because I know so many people that still in this day and age with all the knowledge we have say, I'll sleep when I'm dead. And I'm like, you'll be dead before that. And because, right, early Alzheimer's, all the things that it causes, and sleep is so important for you to focus and think well. Actually, I remember one of your people in your class who got up at a graduation and said, I learned from Radia to buy a new mattress and I'll sleep better. And I was like, oh God.
Listen, I don't think we even understand, to your point, how important it is. And I know I'm more clear. Even like just, actual vital signs got better from sleeping more, which,
That's amazing.
for me, it was like, it took a long, long time. And, Yeah, I had bought this mattress system that I heard about on a podcast, and one of
Oh, I
my
think I
friends,
know what it is. I probably have it too.
yeah, I told them about it, and one of them, after like 3 years, he goes, "It changed my life."
Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh. I love it. I love it. I love it. Any final words of advice? Oh my gosh, you've given me so much great information for the audience too. Just relatable. I so appreciate it, Jim.
No, listen, it's always, I appreciate the invitation. I always enjoy speaking with you. And, I've seen how many people just on our team and at Wakefern that you've helped, throughout your career already. So, to be invited by you to speak is an honor. But I would just say, listen, my advice always is one person, one moment in time. Tomorrow, my advice will probably be slightly different than the next day. Enjoy what you do and be thankful for what you're doing. If you have your health, everything else is really secondary, because, you can have all the success. And if you don't have your health, and we know people in those situations, it's horrible. So do what you can to be healthy, do what you can to take care of people around you, try and support or surround yourself with people that support you, and reach out to each other. I'm like on LinkedIn, every time I speak anywhere, I'm active on LinkedIn. If you send an invite, I'll find you, and, just follow and give yourself, just like the food you're eating, good content for your mind, that's going to get you to the direction you want to go, which, we're all headed in different places. What your goals are, not everybody's clear on them, and it may change, but, just make sure you're moving forward. That's about it.
I love it. Thank you so much, Jim.